All right, everyone. Calling the meeting to order at 6:31. Got a agenda here, but before we dive into that, let's just do a roll call for DRB. Patrick Bradley here.
Barry Rotman here. John McCabe.
Linda Gray.
Emily Myers.
Lisa Post.
Let's see, we got Alex.
Matt Stewart.
Alec Ornstein.
Great. All right, first item of business is to approve the agenda for this evening. We had a chance to look at it ahead of time, hopefully. Any edits? If not, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move.
Thank you. And a second by Emily. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
I'm an alternate, and
Okay.
so they have sufficient people, but I was very interested in listening to you folks, and so here I am. But I won't vote with them because that would be confusing, I think.
Great. And so next up is has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from our last meeting in May? Any edits to the minutes?
I saw one thing, it may be pretty minor, but when it lists the members present after my name, there's a comma instead of a period or nothing, which almost makes you think there's supposed to be someone else. Just for what it's worth.
We'll fix that.
Excellent. All right, anything, if hearing nothing else, can I get a motion to accept the minutes?
Move to accept the minutes.
Thanks, Emily.
15.
And I'll second.
All right, trading
I'll
those.
switch out, yeah.
All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
All right, unanimous again, Steve.
Yep.
Public comments. I'm assuming that most people are here for one of the hearings, but if not, anything separate from any members of the public online? Okay, well, let's get to cut to the chase then. First, application we're looking at tonight is number 30 BCU 2225, excuse me. Applicant Heidi Eldred as trustee. Conditional use and waiver review for renovation of existing buildings in the primary shoreline protection area. And the landowner is Heidi Eldred, okay. Hi, Heidi.
Thank you. Chris Ross is going to present.
Okay, excellent,
Great.
excellent.
Would you like to come sit at the table, please?
Right here?
Yep, so you can take.
Would you like a real chair?
Thank you.
Plus it's warm.
Yeah, which everyone wants, right? More warmth.
A little winter, right?
All right, Chris, sometimes, actually, let's put these exhibits into evidence here. The applicant has, presented 5, exhibits, A1 through A5. And then the town has also, submitted some, exhibits ZA1 through ZA4. Can we have a motion to put those into evidence?
I'll move.
Thanks, Linda.
A second.
I know where that's going. All those in favor? Great. Okay, Chris, you want to maybe set the stage here? Give us a little bit of a summary of what you guys are looking for with this application.
Yeah, absolutely. So the address in question is 28 Hobson Road. There's an existing 1.5-story Cape residence there. It has a small addition off to the east side. What is desired is renovation and expansion of that residence. We don't quite know yet what exactly is going to be saved, but the footprints are going to be saved. The addition off to the east and the main footprint as well, and a expansion toward the south away from the river. The entire property almost lies within the 100-foot setbacks established, or the waterway setbacks established, leaving very little space on the lot for any development. We felt that it was far more beneficial to utilize existing footprints and then to create new disturbances on the site, particularly toward the only buildable location or location outside of the your setbacks, which is on the southeast side. That's all that is left. Very small sliver. The majority of the lot is within that riparian zone. So yeah, that's setting the stage. Would you like me to continue with the nuts and bolts of what we've put together?
Let's see, just to, in terms of the ask, this is both conditionally, why is this conditional use? Because it's none,
Yeah, it's,
yeah,
well, it's because it's in the shoreline protection
Okay.
overlay district.
Yes, correct.
Requires review by and they're requesting a waiver of that regulation, which is available in the land use regulations.
okay. I did have a chance to take a look at this one. I think the thing that I took away from this was that the renovation is not getting closer to the brook, essentially. I'm happy to let you sort of lay it out more granularly if the DRB thinks that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Would folks find that helpful?
I think so. I think it would, maybe specifically drawing our attention to the waiver request.
Yes, absolutely. Let me explain just really briefly the moves that were done architecturally to establish a home at this location per the client's requests for that home. We put all of our expansion, we drew a definitive line on the north side closest to the riverway, and any work was that was done to the home moved to the south. So nothing expands closer to the river than the existing home. We have also moved slightly away from the western setback. And then toward the south, we expand a modest amount, 4 feet, plus a covered deck, covered front porch area. That's a little bit deeper. So
when you're when you're saying south, just to orient everybody, that's on the
page on our, yes, that's correct. So Hobson Road is positioned to the south side of the site, and to the north side is Blood Brook.
And even as you come closer to the street, if you will, nothing here is the lot setback is still not being broached, right? It's just you're expanding the existing footprint, not closer to the water, and you're not encroaching on the road within the lot setback.
That's correct. We're within all lot line setbacks apart from our discussion about the riparian zone, which is 100 feet from the brook.
Okay.
And then we are specifically looking, the existing footprint is 1568. The new footprint is 2,282. The percent change is 146%. Percent allowable is 150.
Well done.
Captured within that added footprint is some exterior porch and decks as well. We included that as part of the footprint in this calculation. Has everybody, then just as a building envelope, we also provided a basic street side elevation to give you a sense of the character of the proposed building. It's within the height allowable limits. And also it incorporates a number of New England vernacular design elements, such as covered porches, screened in areas, chimneys, and traditional gabled roofs. And 6/1, which the drawing shows 6/1 windows, TBD on that, but it is of a New England vernacular typology. We felt that was important for the site and the context in Norwich. Let me open up or just click over to the application narrative and go down to response to waivers. And let me just briefly, I think everybody's read these through, but I'll present just briefly on these items. We find that due to special circumstances of the particular site, no other reasonable area on the lot exists for development. So we've made every single attempt here to stay within the existing footprint as possible, given the client's wishes for an expanded home. We even kept and designed very carefully around a sort of odd box that's off to the east and north side of the existing home. But we've successfully incorporated it, and we're happy for that. So due to special circumstances of the site, there's no other reasonable area to build. The SLO goes far into the lot, and there's nowhere that's reasonably buildable outside of that. The existing driveway, I mentioned the southeast corner, that's where the drive is, and also it's steeper slopes. The existing front riparian buffer where the proposed road will sit is primarily peace. So in terms of site disturbances and vegetation and all that, we don't foresee any impermeable surfaces and of such being added to the existing. Find that provisions can be made to provide. So the new home will feature gutters. It will feature a great majority of the roof slopes headed away from the stream. And of course, it'll receive much, much better grading than exists now. There's a serious water retention issue at the existing house because it has no gutters. In fact, it has no overhangs, and that's caused significant rot and mold, mildew, and moss all around the site. That'll be greatly improved. So the site will dry out, in fact, considerably. Floodplain, we're at a very high elevation in relation to the riverfront. And again, any disturbances will be moved toward the front, and landscaping and such will provide for more proper drainage on the site.
Yeah, if I could
Thanks,
just
Chris.
follow on with the floodplain. There is a FEMA recognized floodplain on Bloody Brook. This property is more than 18 feet above the base flood elevation, so it doesn't impact that at all, and it's never would.
Matt, I think I saw your hand. Do you still have a question?
I think it was answered, but I couldn't tell what was being read that was being cited. So the house is getting 54 or something % bigger footprint. but does that mean the permeable ground, it's taking up more permeable ground?
So the
before?
house, yeah, so the house footprint is increasing 146%. So 100% of the original, we're allowed 150%. So we're just under that. That would be impermeable surfaces because it's either porches or decks, entry points, or the footprint of the home, the interior structure or heated volume of the home. So yes,
And
it would be
the
would be impermeable. The carriage shed is
And-
not being touched at all, and it's not included
Okay.
in these calculations as it's not a focus.
And is
of the-
is there
of the
any
project.
plans regarding, I mean, the driveway, kind of based on my memory and looking at it, is it part asphalt and part hard pack?
I believe it's all asphalt. There's a top bit that is a bit of hard pack up near the entry point. Maybe Heidi could chime in a little bit about the condition of the driveway.
Yeah, it's
Just
all
trying to
asphalt.
figure in, it's all asphalt, okay.
It's all asphalt.
So I think, so I have to imagine we should take that into consideration for impermeable ground, but with it being above the floodplain, I don't know if that matters. Maybe Stephen could shed light on that for us, or anyone.
I could comment just a little bit more about existing conditions and impermeable surfaces. The current front of the home features fieldstone patio, quite extensive. Our new footprint builds into that. In most definitions of impermeable surface, that flagstone patio actually would be considered impermeable surface. So the trade-off there is very little. And then behind the home, not cataloged here, not that we're asking about it now, but we did remove a non-conforming deck out the back that was rotting and everything because of the poor drainage conditions on the site. And again, those poor drainage conditions still do exist, and those will be greatly improved with the new residents. So our homeowner, Heidi, has already made improvements toward the riparian zone or toward the river frontage, not cataloged in this application, but just as an anecdotal comment.
Lisa Close, you're speaking about some of the things that I was interested in, and I guess I'd like to hear just a little bit more about impervious surface, and you've mentioned how much there is. Where is the water going when you talk about work being done around the house to make it a drier area? Downhill from that may become a wetter area unless there's catch basins or changes, modifications to the surrounding property that might assure that it seems like when I drove by this, if I'm right, you're kind of up on a hill and there's a fair number of other houses downhill from you and the road. I'm thinking about gully washers and what.
Right, there are no houses directly below me.
On the other
There's
side of
me,
the road.
there's the road, and then there's Brookside kind of meanders around. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of wooded area. So it's my house, the slope of my house, the Norwich Town Road or the State Road. Then there is a wooded area, and then there's a drop below there, which is where there are other homes. But the road and a vegetative buffer is between.
So the existing home, in terms of permeable surfaces and what occurs with water on the site right at the moment, I mentioned a lot of surface moss. There's a lot of surface water that gets retained. It's not properly sloped, and the soil is not very drainable. So when renovations and additions occur and foundation structures and stuff get done, it'll be backfilled with clean, dry sand type fill. That will also have footing drains. Those footing drains will most likely daylight toward they will daylight toward the street and be captured in the front yard swale that's there at the street side. Additional measures at this current time would be gutters as well. We feel that that'll be quite important given the structure and the site. Additional measures at this point in time are not proposed, such as dry wells, retention, surface retention ponds or areas. Currently, we feel that any sort of addition like that would be a construction inside the riparian zone and would require intensive excavation and material to be moved and sorted toward the river. And that is not in our plans right now. We feel that that would be detrimental. The lower part of the site actually does drain and dry quite well, so.
Thank you.
The lower side of the site, Hobson side or opposite?
Yeah, opposite northeast corner drains quite well. There's a number of retaining walls there, and the carriage shed has actually a quite dry walkout.
And that's where
Basement that's open air. That's where
the pipes will daylight?
No,
The pipes will
they
daylight, so they'll daylight on Hobson roadside.
That's correct, yes.
And there is no
for the footing
culvert,
drains,
right? Oh, just the footing drains, not the,
just footing drains.
not the gutter drains.
No, footing drains,
Okay.
footing drains.
Any other questions? Don?
Yeah, Don McCabe. Heidi, the deck that's currently there is getting replaced or just removed?
It has already been removed just because it's unsafe. It is
right.
it's rotted, so there's nothing there right
Do you
now.
plan to put another deck on?
As of now, no, but the possibility does exist for that, but
Mhm.
right now, I don't believe we can. No.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. I think we can close this public meeting if there are no other questions or. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
We need a motion to close the hearing.
Good question.
I think we need a motion to close the hearing.
You get a motion to
I so
close this hearing. Thanks, Don. Second. Thanks, Linda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Great.
Thank you.
So, now that the hearing's been closed, we won't take any further testimony, but we're going to have a deliberative session and we have 45 days to issue a decision on the matter.
Do I listen into that or?
No, we deliberate, in the
Right.
closed session. Yeah,
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right. Okay, next hearing is for application number 25 DE 25. Development envelope and driveway waiver review. For relocation of an existing development envelope.
Yeah.
Applicant is Christina Denosi. Landowner is the Carlton Family Trust. Buck, sorry if I'm not saying that right, Carlton 30. On Beaver Meadow Road. All right, Jeff's in the house.
Right, so full size copies of.
Why don't you
On
bring
the
us
table like usual,
up to the table?
and I'm not gonna unfold the detail. But some of the question.
Don't knock over our coffee thermos.
Yeah. Thing follows me.
It stacks too. So, let's put these, exhibits into the record.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that for a second.
Oh, sure. You did.
I do have an addition to, the record.
Okay.
An email from Chris Kaufman, who had questions, for the board to direct to the applicant.
So this will be ZA 6.
ZA 6, yes. I would also like to incorporate in that all of the attachments
Right,
that were included in Chris Kaufman's email, of which there were several.
alright. And this is from the town Department of Works?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Department of Public Works. Also, I think I have to correct for the, Jeff, if you want to see a copy of this, it's right here.
I can guess what he's saying.
Okay. I'd also like to correct for the record, I included our land use, our zoning ordinance as exhibits. However, I think it is more appropriate to review this under the subdivision regulations. We are in essence amending a prior subdivision through the process of removing and moving a development envelope. It's not a new development envelope per se.
Okay, you're saying that there was a past previous subdivision that created this lot
Yes,
and we're amending it to move the development envelope?
yes. The applicant has spoken to the subdivision regulations in their narrative.
Okay,
So to the exhibits, I'd like to remove reference to the two land use regulations, the development envelope review and the driveway waiver, and replace that with the subdivision regulation.
okay, so ZA3 would be replaced with the subdivision regs?
Yeah,
Okay. So maybe to help us out, I mean, Jeff, we'd love to hear the sort of history and narrative, but is there a particular sub-regulation that the applicant, is asking to be waived?
I'm catching up on stuff that I'm hearing tonight, which is fine. So the main issue, I think, Patrick, is that, and I can walk briefly through what was and we're proposing, is that a former DRB, former staff, agreed to a subdivision with the development envelope that does not comport with the rules. And so we want to move the development envelope to address the rules. Kind of, we're not doing any further subdivision.
Yep.
Driveway proposed, yada, yada, is about how to comport with the rules. I haven't read what Chris said, and I'm glad to delve into this in detail, but the gist of this is with respect to the existing driveway permit, if Chris's main posture is update, drainage calculations, he's right.
that's essentially what it is.
He's right.
And we can walk through those
Okay.
questions specifically.
Drainage as a consequence of the building of
Yes,
the
but-
driveway?
Without focusing on, I don't need to jump ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I can do a little bit of the background and then move forward. But for the past, for the existing approval, the applicant, owner, Buck Garland, was seeking, Kelly Karen is representing Buck Garland. And then we have Christina and Patty as the buyers for this parcel. And full disclosure, I've worked with Kelly for a long time in various capacities. And Christina and Patty can talk about, they've worked around, they want to be in Norwich, they've worked at various parcels. This parcel is with where they would like to build their home. And so we've gone through a bunch of effort to facilitate that based on what the rules say. So I apologize for not introducing sooner. Just skipping forward to Chris, Buck basically said, hey, I have to spend a little more time on this, and I don't want to over nerd things. If I do, let me know. But at the time, the past DRB looked at the site, they didn't look at slope issues, and they didn't look at wetland issues. So when Buck asked us to say, hey, can you get a driveway permit for this? We actually conducted wetland delineations, did a whole bunch of contours, et cetera, and had Rebecca Chalmers, the District 3 ecologist, weigh in and say this is a class 3 wetland, there's no state permit needed for it. There's more to that. but essentially working with Chris, okay.
Yeah, you keep referring to a driveway permit. Do you not mean an access permit?
Whatever the right word is,
It's an access permit, and I think
you're right,
the,
access permit.
the difference matters. Essentially, the driveway permit is a stub that grants you permission to develop in the town's right of way. A driveway, is a substantial improvement, so access permit, I think is.
Yeah, March 4, 2024. So,
Yeah.
long story short, with Chris and Brennan to some extent, we looked at location for the driveway, for the access permit, in terms of site distance and then minimizing environmental impacts, and then eventually got the permit from Chris. And the location of the driveway has not changed, but the watershed potentially contributing to the driveway and the culvert that we saw is potentially bigger. And so I infer that Chris is saying, hey, look, if you're changing the watershed, you ought to relook at the side of the culvert for the drainage path.
Okay,
So I mean, that's the access permit issue.
okay. And is that something that we can just make like a contingent, like, is that a separate issue, like the access?
No, the access permit's been granted.
Okay,
But Chris has some questions, having looked at the actual plans for the driveway.
Yeah,
Instead of site construction plans, instead of the site plan. Based on that, he has some additional questions that he'd like the applicant to answer. And if we're satisfied with those answers,
is that necessary to, I guess what I'm trying to, is that necessary for us to do what we have to do in terms of approving the amended subdivision or moving the development envelope? Is that what the ultimate goal is?
there's two things happening here. One is the amending the subdivision for a new development envelope.
Okay.
And also a reviewing the driveway that's being proposed.
Okay,
Which is substantial improvement. It's a large piece of infrastructure. Which by design has drainage, sort of stormwater infrastructure questions that Chris Kaufman is interested in, because it does intersect
and it goes back down to
the town's infrastructure.
to the top, to Beaver Meadow Road. Is that,
Yes,
okay?
Yeah.
Think I understand, all right. So,
Patrick, do you need the copy of Chris's email back to you?
sure, I haven't. But we'll
but
have a chance to do
the
that.
access permit's been granted.
Okay.
So they have a right to access the property via this, according to the standards that were set out and conditional upon the approval of that access permit.
So I was expecting to see like well, maybe Jeff can explain. Like, I was expecting to see an existing development envelope or something, but I see. This is, I'm assuming, up on the top of the hill.
Yeah, so the short version, I think this is around 2010, is that
Okay.
when the applicant came in to subdivide the smaller parcel up the road.
Yeah.
No, it's so where you're looking, if I can, yeah,
Yeah.
it's this parcel. here.
Okay, yeah.
My plans are up.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
So
let
this
me do
is
it.
the zoning envelope.
Oh, okay. I
They
didn't.
applied for
I need to see like a little pass. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure I'm oriented. Yeah, you're fine.
Either
I
way.
just want to put the road. So basically, there was an existing home that was subdivided out.
Yep.
And not being involved, not having any comment about past DRB or staff,
Yeah,
2 development envelopes were proposed.
yeah,
My understanding of the record as it is, the planning, the DRB basically said, hey, look, if you're gonna access the upper development envelope, then we wanna see a full-blown grading plan that comports with state rule. That's basically what I understand. And further, the applicant, which is Buck Carlton, didn't proceed with that. And so my understanding is the development envelope at the bottom of the hill was approved
okay.
for the purpose of use of this project.
Mhm.
I don't know how the topography that was presented with the DRB was developed. What is shown here is in excess of 25%. I would say that it's more than that downward, and the original approval didn't consider the wetlands that are down in the lower field portion as well. So our access permit efforts with Chris and the town included delineation of the wetlands, looking at site distances, et cetera, and putting the driveway in that location.
Got it.
As we look further at it, the question was, well, how do we flip this over to match that line? How is it possible, given the restriction for construction of a structure? You can't do a structure, a home on slopes of 25% or more. How do we essentially facilitate that? And the first location where that's possible is basically at the top of the hill where the previous development was. Furthermore, looking at the wetlands that are at the bottom that were that are acknowledged by the state ecologist, we just want to minimize impacts to get up to the top of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
So let me step backward. This application, if I may, by analogy, as you know, we just did Scott McCampbell's subdivision for Nina, whose driveway was a little over 600 feet long. The one prior to that was for Daphne. It's about the same length as this. Same process for Daphne, then Nina. So we're essentially, when I approach Steve, the question is, we're not seeking subdivision to exist. We've got an existing wastewater permit. We've got an existing access permit. All we got to do is find a buildable site that comports with what the rules say. And effectively, we've gone through a full-blown grading plan to make that happen. I have some comments about the development. I go a little bit further and acknowledge that from a state standpoint, like we said with Scott McCampbell, this is going to require a state construction general permit, the 3-9020, because we're impacting more than an acre of contiguous area during construction. So we're gonna have to resolve, various calculations going to that process, but that's the only other permit element that's associated with this. Steve brought up a question about Act 250. And the legislature somewhat recently re-invoking the 800-foot rule for Act 250. And I was grateful for Steve to bring that up. But after working through this with Pete Costco and others with some effort, my understanding is that there's a process of review that's going on, and that actually that requirement for Act 250 permitting will actually not take place until sometime in 2026.
Why?
So there's no Act 250 permit required for this. So anyway, one final component that I went back and forth with Chris to explain this to. I don't know whether this is true anymore, but the past requirement by the Army Corps of Engineers was for impacts of 5,000 square feet or more, there has to be a notification process. Excuse me, up to 5,000 square feet. For the wetland that doesn't require a state permit. We may do that anyway, even though I don't think that's required by law anymore. Nonetheless, we're trying to keep our impacts to a class 3 wetland that's not regulated by the state of Vermont to less than 5,000 square feet.
Just to ask you to expand on that a little bit, through the access permit process, there was Rebecca Chalmers was involved. There was a wetland permit that was issued for that area, or was there already existing wetland permit?
So the short answer is no wetland permit. So in Vermont, anytime you see a roadside ditch, a stream, sensitive fern, and let's just say, I do this all the time, where other folks don't. You need to call the district ecologists that have, in this case, Rebecca come down, or someone in her staff, to look at the site and classify. If it's a class 3 wetland, there's no state permit required. If it's class 2 wetland, that means not only is there a requirement to permit direct wetland impacts, but also impacts within 50 feet. It's a 50-foot buffer of the wetland. There are no class 1 wetlands that I'm aware of in Vermont. You set that aside for a minute. But so in this case, we actually, wetland scientists hung flags. Rebecca came down, she looked at it, she made a classification. It's all in writing, it's class 3. It's not a Vermont issue. We maintain those delineations nonetheless for the purpose of minimizing potential impacts. That's why we're back and forth with location
with Chris and Brennan about, how do we minimize impacts?
And I can confirm that there's an email from Rebecca Chalmers saying there are no there's no state recognized wetlands on that lower portion of the property.
Okay, but it's nevertheless a less desirable place or place out, it's non-conforming with the regulations, you're saying, to be
Yeah.
down there.
I would defer to Steve. In the old days, I would use the word, we need a variance for this, because the rules don't allow. But whatever you say today.
You're the applicant. Can you speak to that?
Well, so, if it's not a permitted use and there's no conditional use, traditionally, it's a variance. There's nothing in
No, I
our,
understand what the variance is, but specifically to that location, how is it not?
we cannot build a structure in the lower development envelope, that avoids 25% slopes.
Yeah,
Okay. Can I ask a layman's terms? Okay, so you're saying you cannot build, like the house cannot be close to Beaver Meadow because it is 25% grade. Therefore, you have to have the driveway to go all the way up to the top where there's not a 25% grade. So the permit has already been accepted, the access permit or the driveway permit.
No, the access
Just
permit.
access permit has been approved.
The driveway is still in question.
Okay,
Just the access off the road, they've got permission to exit the road in one spot, but the driveway is nothing.
okay.
is the driveway essentially part of the development envelope? I mean, I know we have to like, we're gonna get some point to it, like it's not 15% or more, so now we're gonna be talking about the driveway here or no?
Yes,
So it's not, but it's not part of the
But
development.
the development envelope is a function to me of the home,
Yeah.
and the wastewater.
Okay,
The upper area, which I want to talk about, because I'd like to move 50 feet or so, because I didn't do that quite right, but.
so.
but Emily's question was generally, your explanation is generally correct, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So going up to the plateau.
Can I address one other slope thing? What's a bit ironic to me is, the wastewater design and permit that was done for this project was done by Brian Rampanati, whom I know well, and he does a decent job. The wastewater system that's approved is at the top of the hill. And the reason for that is the state rules, so in, was it January 2007, statewide, the state rules govern wastewater in subdivision. Prior to that, Norwich did its own wastewater stuff. It had its own rules. So going forward from January 2007, the state has a requirement for any new lot development, you can't put a wastewater system on a slope greater than 20%. So the first place that was found, which was essentially approved by the prior DRB, is at the top of the hill.
Even back, you're saying that when this last up,
That was 2010, which is after 2007, yes.
And
So-
stuff does, that's the building up.
I don't want to comment on Stafford here, but the wastewater system was
Yeah.
compliant with the rules, the development envelope was not.
okay,
Okay, so. Patrick asked, what specific subdivision regulation or do you need waived?
The only thing we need waived is, as we did with Gamble, although this is not a subdivision per se, is the slope. It's building a driveway
right,
for access.
Yeah.
On a slope of 25% or more.
so Matt, remember when we were asking, I thought you did a good job explaining or helping me understand it, it's not that the driveway itself is 25% or more, it's that the slope that it's being built into is 25% or more?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's the hill that you're cutting from.
Okay,
What is the slope of that hill that you're cutting from? If it's above whatever the threshold is, 20 or 25 or below. And then the next threshold is, what is the slope of the driveway itself, which I guess is 12%. And so I guess those are the two things that we're considering here.
okay,
And I do want to apologize because I included zoning regulations, which are separate from our subdivision regulations. And the, zoning regulations are not incorporated by reference into the subdivision regulations. So we have a driveway standards that exist separately in our zoning regulations. There's no such waiver or just, standards for a driveway in our subdivision regulations.
Okay. Well, we'll just borrow from them then.
Am I the only one confused?
Yeah,
If I understand, just to summarize, the wetland issue close to the road is no longer an issue, correct?
So Don, there's no permit requirement that I'm aware of.
Right.
And I want to be careful because I don't know when this happened. There was a Supreme Court decision in the last presidential administration that talked about wetlands. So I don't know if the 5,000 square foot threshold applies. Nonetheless, we're trying to minimize wetlands even in a class 3 to keep them less than 5,000 square feet.
Okay. The second question I have is, and it was mentioned by someone else. Yes, the slope itself going up the hill is greater than 25, but your S-shaped driveway reduces it to 12%.
Yes, a maximum slope down of 12%, and Kelly could probably comment on how many iterations we looked at before Christina and Patty basically jumped in, so.
Okay,
Short answer, yes.
all right. And the third question I have is, the envelope on top of the hill includes a wastewater area that is, we don't do wastewater. We let the state do that. But the state is saying that that is not currently approved?
It is approved, Don.
It is
That was approved in 2010.
Yeah.
Okay,
So this
All right.
was, there were two systems that were approved, I think, for the existing home. And then up here, when I first looked at this, I'm like, what the heck? And then I looked at the slopes and said, got it. So my personal intent was to say, where's the house and the wastewater system? I
Yeah.
didn't really need to include the driveway, but
okay,
the one thing I would like to do is move this upper line a little bit, because I got a little close to the grading, but
Yeah.
that's the basis.
okay.
And may I just ask to refer this, so this is the original building envelope that's
It is,
been
yeah.
approved, and you feel you're arguing that it is in fact not buildable? Is that correct? Because,
We can't build there without impacting 25% slopes or more.
They'd have to start
Right.
cutting out the side of a hill.
unless you're like right in this spot or something?
You're all in wetlands right
Which is
there.
wet.
Oh, okay, fine, okay, and so for this building envelope, that was always the location of the wastewater?
Yes.
So
So,
the applicant originally
Interesting, okay.
proposed this development envelope. But the DRB pushed back and said, unless you can give us a plan that shows the full layout and grading.
of this driveway.
This was 2010
Yeah.
today
But the final notice
was this.
didn't have that, yeah.
Right, right.
So this
Because
was
the
like-
applicant did not come forward with this level of
Okay.
detail.
Got
So
it.
I don't know politics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've done their homework, they've had the people
Right.
out.
And so you need from the DRB, what you are looking for is permission to like get rid of this, move to this building envelope, and also approve the driveway plan?
Yeah, I think we need a waiver to do the driveway.
Yes,
it disturbs slopes over 15%.
Mm-hmm.
So the construction of the driveway it also, like the lower development envelope, disturbs steep slopes. And is what you'll need to waive. Using the waiver standards in the subdivision regulations.
Okay.
So if I may be a little bit crass, we basically stole the Campbell application and applied it to this, the two.
okay. Any questions?
Sorry, one more question about the driveway. Is it just in the open pasture area or will any trees be affected?
So some trees will be affected. The bubbles, I'm gonna say this gently, I think, the bubbles we're showing were off LiDAR. And when I say line, we're looking at the Vermont Center geographic information and say, where's the tree line? So we were intruding slightly with grading into the tree line. But largely it's in the open area.
Okay.
And the 5,000 feet that you're talking about is comprised of driveway disturbance to the wetland?
So, any impact, direct wetland impact, is what I'm talking about, Patrick, and,
But it would be at the bottom there?
at the bottom of the hill. And so we actually walked the entire site.
Yeah.
And took, you can see on the edge here, we took Rebecca up the hill, but this peters out quickly. And there's no wetland area over here.
Right.
There is a wetland that goes down to the pond, and there's
Yeah.
a nice, perennial stream that goes down there too. But nothing upgraded from that.
So it's just gonna be the first, it's just gonna be the first part of the driveway that goes through
Yes.
that area anyway, right?
Okay, and Jeff, can you, for layperson, just outline, so how would you characterize, class 3 wetland? How would you describe it?
So the state, is Steve knows, all this, it's the state threshold is, it's a half acre in size. Or it's connected to essentially a waterway. So because, and you know, when I first looked at this, I thought Rebecca was gonna say this is class 3. If she was going to assign a waterway classification to the roadside ditch, and she said that's a roadside ditch, so it's class 3. If it had been a stream, whether intermittent or perennial, then the connectivity of wetlands beside that would have resulted in class 2 classification with a 50-foot setback on top of that. So the bottom line is it's either half acre in size or it's connected to an existing intermittent or perennial stream or wetland complex.
Okay. Any other questions, Matt, Alec?
I have a question to the board. Do the members feel like they have enough information to make this decision? Recognizing that there was sort of this substantial information around the access permit and a preliminary plat decision and a final decision.
I have a question. If the access permit is granted because the conditions are met, that leads then to a driveway permit request?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
okay, and that would be a
You're not,
separate
you're not,
hearing.
no, a driveway's not granted
Right.
with an access
Right.
permit. It's just the right to
So
access.
so that would be another hearing. For the driveway permit
Yeah,
request.
for, it's,
Okay.
yeah, it's development.
Right, gotcha.
So I don't know what Chris said, but based on what I infer, I think it's reasonable to condition whatever you decide on Chris's review. So let me frame this. I can't remember. I think we said we're gonna put an 18-inch culvert at the bottom of the hill based on the watershed. The watershed's a little bigger. So it's reasonable to go revisit those calcs.
Yeah, it's 2.65 acres was the.
It's bigger than that.
Okay.
And so what,
When you say it's bigger than that now,
So-
is that the development envelope?
nope.
What's the,
Back to nerding out again. So if the watershed is based on a culvert crossing here, if I follow the contours up gradient perpendicular to the contours, the existing watershed is something like this.
oh, okay,
Now, if I'm putting a driveway over here and I'm collecting runoff beyond that, I'm now adding this watershed to that.
oh, okay, so you might have to make it like a 20-inch or something.
Maybe even bigger,
Yeah,
but right
okay.
now, the existing watershed divide goes something like this toward the pond. So when we go through the 3-90-20 process, we're gonna try and slice that out. It's entirely probable that this little area in here is gonna increase, which warrants upsizing the culvert for Chris's acceptance.
Okay,
If that makes sense.
so we'd say something like conditioned on, the Department of Public Works review of final, or that.
And then the access permit based on public works review.
Yeah,
But the decision that you are looking for immediately from the DRB simply relates to the, development.
Development envelope and the driveway slope, Linda.
Okay, both of them.
The
Okay.
waiver, yeah.
Okay, oh, so, yeah, so it's like, in order to make that a workable, a practical, development envelope, there has to be a driveway to it. And so we have to say, acknowledge that, yes, there will be a driveway, and then what you were pointing out is the details about the driveway would come up in a separate,
Here.
action by us? Oh, no, you're saying.
If you can't access the development envelope review, you can't act,
Oh, okay, fine, all right, okay.
and to do so.
Part of the development envelope review, but don't you dare say it's part of the development.
So
And was anybody else thinking about helicopters like 30 seconds ago?
Chairlift.
That first came into my head, but that was a Beta Vermont.
Yeah, yeah. The new funicular.
Yeah.
So I have a question, that I didn't think to ask Steve in a different way, but the plat that was created includes meets and bounds. But there was never anything that sort of pinned down the corners of the development, which we've been doing for some time prior to Steve, and we've done in recent applications. So my assumption would be that another condition you guys would require is representation of the development envelope as a condition with meets and bounds. My only question for you all is, what I did was hugged the grading sort of and gave room down below the wastewater area. I'd like to move this uphill, another 50 feet or so, because I don't want to be too close to the grading from my standpoint. But so anyway, if a condition is hypothetically, even though it wasn't required before, you need to provide a plat that provides a development envelope, that would be consistent with what we've been doing in the town.
And I have a following question for you, because you referenced a couple times the fact that you want to adjust this line. So the line that we see on the map now, you would like this rectangle to be a slightly different one. Is the whole rectangle moved up, or is the rectangle larger?
I was just gonna make the so normally what I do is do a grading plan and put a box around the grading plan. And in this case, I try to give some room. I think the wastewater system actually could move this line uphill. So if you said we slide the whole thing up, there's probably room to do that. I was conservative on this side, but because of the grading on this side, I wasn't conservative. So
Right.
that, I'm just saying I made a mistake here. I think I'm conservative here and not conservative up there.
And for our purposes, like, right now, though, do we have before us this? But so, given that you've said, oh, but I want to amend that a bit, that's fine, we can accept that. Like, we don't have to, before we finalize this, we don't have to have a new map with the
Well,
actual.
he's saying we could make, it'll have to be on the plat.
Well, we actually have survey controls to be able to do meets and bounds on this. Right now, all I'm saying is I'd like to move that line, uphill line, a little bit uphill. And I don't care if the bottom downhill line comes up like this.
And our decision can accommodate this
It's,
bit
I
of
mean,
fuzziness.
it's a really
Yeah.
minimal
Right.
change. So if you feel that you can make a decision by imagining what that looks like, yeah.
And that's,
We don't have a requirement to record development envelope reviews in the land record.
right, yeah.
I mean, at the point of subdivision, yes, but amendments of them, there's no rule for that.
It wasn't required, but I mean, like, I'm agree, we should do that. I think that's the right thing to do.
Well, so, yes,
Thank you.
This is progress. All right, so I mean, there's really no other place to build on this spot.
Further up.
Even farther?
Yeah, but no, we don't wanna talk about Ridgeline. Let's not talk about Ridgeline. I don't wanna, not going there.
and just as, I mean, if you guys are familiar with the waiver standards, the criteria that are required to waive,
Yes,
yep.
okay, good. Alec? Getting off easy tonight. All right. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you very much. Can we get a motion to close this public hearing?
I move.
Don, thank you. Second, Barry. Godson.
Great,
All those in favor?
Aye.
all in.
Bye.
Great, so public hearing is closed. Will,
Thanks,
I'm
folks.
sorry,
We didn't give you a chance to, did you want to comment?
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure
we can,
exactly what we wanna do, but
are you in a butter or?
yeah, so my wife Sarah and Aaron, we own and occupy the small. piece
Yeah.
that is carved out.
Yeah.
The house there. And, most of it, we get the opportunity to get a sense of what might be planned and all that. Fascinating, all good.
Cool.
The only piece of it that we're not sure about is the location of the driveway. It gets right up to the edge of quite a steep slope. Down the bottom of that slope is the stream you referenced. The stream goes into the pond. It also goes into a well, which is right next to the pond, and that's the source of our water. And it's an old dug well, so sensitive, I imagine. Our guests are the piece of it that we want to obviously make sure of is that the runoff or any disturbance from the driveway construction or anything else there doesn't create too much of a problem with the surface water runoff and ultimately our source of water. I don't really know what the details are.
Yeah, sorry.
Should we reopen this meeting or did it
Oh, yeah,
officially
sure.
close?
Close it, maybe we should.
Yeah, let's have a motion to reopen it.
You do that.
I'll make that
Don?
motion to reopen it or Don, whatever. I'll
Okay.
second.
Second.
Okay. And let's reopen it and we can have you introduce yourself, please.
Sure, Aaron Sheldon.
There, Sean.
Thank you. And abutters. Okay,
Excuse me, are you the little white house on the
Yeah.
Yeah.
map?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
I don't think we need to necessarily make them repeat what they said.
yeah, no, it's on here.
Yeah.
It's on the tape. You're upstream or uphill, right?
No,
Yeah.
down on the 2012 subdivision. Where the
Right.
lower corner of
So
it,
is that 714 Beaver Meadow?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you live at 714 Beaver Meadow?
yeah,
Okay,
So if I can interpret what you're saying is you're just a little worried about whether the driveway is gonna end up producing
Well, I
runoff
wouldn't
or,
necessarily make any allegation,
But-
but I can imagine a really, horribly done version of this. That really tore everything up and created quite a lot of runoff into the stream and as a result into our well. I like to assume it can be done without any trouble at all, but
Yeah,
that's the.
Jeff.
concern.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask this Sheldon to come up because to me, their concerns are important, really important. So, same orientation. Their home and driveway, the proposed driveway, and if I look at that, it's not an issue because the culvert that collects the area between the two is here, so it drains this way and that way. The fact of the matter is, however, that the watershed that comes down to the pond, we're gonna be impacting a portion of that. And so, to address their specific concerns, we talked to Christine and Patty and with Kelly and Buck. Whatever happens with the 3-90-20 process has to stabilize this side of the driveway to facilitate not dumping, sediment and whatnot in their pond, because we are going to impact that watershed. So I just want to be clear, where the driveway is not a problem. Where it is up here does encroach on the.
Yeah, and
watershed.
this turn, right, I mean, this slope is quite steep and our well is right there.
and it's a dog well. Do you have the stormwater permit in hand?
So we never do 3-90-20 we get local permits,
Okay.
because it's, any change means we gotta,
3-90.
3-90-20, it's the, stormwater general. 9050 is the impervious one with 20,000 square feet, so. We've been talking, so the upside to this is that the inside catchment area is gonna direct most everything to the bottom, but the Sheldon's concern to me is completely valid with respect to encroachment in that watershed, and we need to manage the runoffs so that we don't put sediment down there.
Is that all wooded?
Yeah, below. So the line of where it's currently flagged. Along that bend there, that's sort of the edge of the woods, and then it goes into the woods a bit, so. Everything below that is essentially woods, and above is largely not.
Yeah.
And Jeff, if you could explain, you know, it's very hard for me even to read these slope maps and know which is up and which is down.
It's okay.
So from the abutter's perspective, is the driveway raised at that point above grade, or are you excavating below grade to make that slope?
So in terms of excavation, Steve, we're well away, but let me give you a number or two. Let's see, 850 down to, Blank and Reed. So, let's go 780.
Are those feet? What are those numbers?
So there are 2 footers shown, the thicker ones are 10 footers.
Mhm,
So we're down at the bottom of the field, we're like 780.
mhm.
That's wrong, but close enough. And so we go up to, 880. 880 is about, so if I said 860, so we're 80 feet above their house at the corner that was just referenced. There's that much grade difference.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, so if I look at Beaver Meadow Road, roughly, it's around.
So I guess the question I have is, at that point, how does the slope change due to either excavation or fill? I mean, are you raising the driveway at that point, or is it?
The driveway's a big cut in here, Steve, so it's gonna be, if the grade is here, we bring the driveway down. And on the uphill side, there's a ditch that can direct stuff away from the Sheldons, but it's the downhill side, how we manage that. Because it's up gradient from the Sheldons, so normally what we do is, whether it's culverts or level of spreaders to meet the rule, dissipate drainage. That, wherever we outlet on this side is gonna be above their pond. I don't think there's a well issue necessarily, but, we need to get the sediment erosion control plan right.
And the road you said is 80-foot elevation above the dug well, roughly?
Well, all the way up to the house, Don, it's, I gotta do the math here. I'm going 780.
Tell me the numbers.
So 780 at the bottom. 880-ish so it's the proposed home is over 100 feet above their home. There's that much slope up to the top of the shelf.
So Jeff, in your comments about an answer to their question, you've said it's like, yes, that could be an issue and we've got to manage it well. And so my question is, what are the ways in which one manages that well correctly? Are the chances of success like 50% or 90% or 100%?
So I do tons of these, and if we do the process with 3-90, sorry. Go ahead, guys.
No, I'm listening. Sorry.
So for any other application, I'm gonna say for this one as well, if you all wanted to condition, some sort of review or even ability of someone to review a 3-90/20 application and make sure that it addresses concerns about erosion and sediment control or downgrading the butter, I wouldn't have any problem with that. For us, we're gonna do it. My concern candidly is very few applicants are gonna do this. So if there's a precedent that you may want to set with respect to, we've got to go through the gyrations of calculating the runoff. We've got to manage it. We've got to create essentially facilities to dissipate the runoff as we discharge it, so that it doesn't create impacts or increase runoff to their property. The staff doesn't have the capability to do that necessarily. In theory,
Staff, you mean, doesn't?
yeah, I mean,
He's talking about me, and you're probably right.
Well, Chris,
The question I have, I guess, hearing that. Is there a chance you do not get this permit?
No, we're gonna get the permit.
Okay.
What I'm saying is any other typical applicant is not gonna come close to what we're proposing to do for this project.
Well, I would hope anybody who's proposing a driveway like this would.
Yeah,
Developer wanted to put in 4 houses, right?
yeah, well,
Have to
let
maximize that.
me just say, Steve, we're gonna do this right, but I wanna make sure that the DRB is thinking about how to make sure it's done right. And it's
Well-
not just because we're the applicant.
Yeah, that, any applicant who's required to get a general stormwater permit will get a general stormwater permit. Has to. Right?
No, I see too many that don't get caught.
Emily?
And also, Matt has.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Follow-up questions, but to add on to, the previous question is, if we, the DRB said, has its own condition saying, yes, we approve it on condition that another entity, and who would that entity be to review the plan to make sure that there would be no runoff, that there would be no sediment?
Well, yeah, so the word would be third party,
Yeah,
hypothetically.
But who does that?
We can make a condition, like
Okay.
most permits are conditional on receipt of any necessary state or federal permits.
So there could, you're referencing the, whatever the number was, is that a state, that's a state thing that you don't actually have to have, but we could tell you, you have to
We
have.
have to have it.
You have to,
We have to have it, Linda. What I'm saying is I see wetland impacts and 3-9020 impacts all the time where applicants are ignoring them and they're not being caught. So,
you mean they are ignoring what?
the law is not being enforced.
yeah, and in this case, I'm telling you the laws, and I'm also saying, I'm not an advocate for third party necessarily. But in, you know, McCampbell, these are larger scale, excavation impacts that we've talked about on the planning commission that weren't a possible consideration of a third party.
What do you mean? I'm sorry, I don't understand third party.
With the
So
state-
you could have another engineer, you could hire someone with my credentials or my skills to come in and say,
We could hire it?
or
Yes,
that we pay, the applicant would pay for it, but in this case, if the
Okay.
staff doesn't have the
Yes,
the
okay.
knowledge to do that. And in a routine scenario, this is one of those cases. So if you wanna create a scenario where to say that the staff, if you said conditionally, the staff may engage a third party at the expense of the applicant to review this.
yeah, I mean, if the DRB feels they would like a,
Right,
you know,
they
second
want
opinion.
reassurance,
Yeah,
yeah.
second opinion from, you know, a
But
qualified engineer.
It's a public, it's a. I'm just thinking out loud, it's like. I'm sure you're gonna, we're not talking specifics here, we're talking like. In general, like you're gonna do a good job, it's gonna work, but in theory.
You
I
wanna
mean, there's a
check your-
third party, like,
The
yeah,
big,
I
the
mean,
big issue.
they
folks-
could always have an action against your neighbor.
Yeah, but the big issue though is, so let me look at how Chris does his access permits. I would say private. Right? Chris has a component that says observation of work. The big issue that could be faced is we get the permits, the applicant goes ahead with some contractor, there's no observation of that work. That's where a key third party element could be. I don't expect that with this applicant, but I'm laying the groundwork for you guys in a bigger way.
Oh, so what you're suggesting is there could be another set of eyes watching, not just the end result,
But
but the,
construction.
okay.
Now, we typically do that, but, depending on what, some applicants may say, okay, I got the permit, I don't need you anymore. But the bigger issue is, given the grading and what's going on here, the town needs the ability to say, has it been built according to state and local permits, or not?
And yeah, the state enforces compliance.
I have a question.
Yeah, man.
I unfortunately can't really see when you're pointing at these maps, so forgive me if this has been covered, but I can't see exactly where the Sheldon's well is. And if the Sheldon's well has a defined well shield, and if that well shield intersects with any of the land that's being worked
Yeah.
on.
May I answer that? Patrick?
Yeah, as long as Sheldon have a chance to
Oh,
as well, but no, you,
Yeah, there's no well shield. The well shield relates to wastewater. That's not the question afoot, though. The question afoot is if there's erosion and sediment that migrates downhill, could it affect, I would say, the pond as well? That's the question.
Is a dug well a non-jurisdictional well?
It is a jurisdictional well, so a typical drill well has a 200-foot up gradient setback for wastewater. A dug well has a 500-foot up gradient well shield.
Okay. If you look at that map, using its scale, are you 500 feet or less from the disturbance? There's that exterior line.
Not that it's, Steve, it is from the wastewater, which is the setback. The scale, what scale? So
That's 200. I mean,
that's 200. It's about 200 feet. It's a little under 200 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
it's,
we're describing kind of buffers for wastewater. Are there similar kinds of definitions for erosion?
No.
Okay.
Didn't you just say there were further protections for a dug well?
Wastewater.
Wastewater.
Well,
Soil or silt or whatever.
Yeah, sorry, I guess my question was around, is this well has no jurisdictional protection?
No well has jurisdictional protection with respect to the drainage. I'm gonna say that generically. If we fall into an Act 250 scenario, maybe different, but.
And
So
so
you-
how do the Sheldons feel about there being disturbance within a 200-foot distance from their drinking water? That's my question.
I mean, it's a concern. We're not, it's like, that's the only thing about it that gave us any pause. Like, we're very excited to have neighbors, please. But it's just that was the only thing about it.
Yeah.
Because it is an old well.
course.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it's a dug well and it's been there for God knows how long. And that is our only worry, that could cause issues both for the pond and for the well.
So-
And to follow up on that question, are you more concerned about that? Or are you more concerned for that reason or other reasons about construction happening in the building envelope that has already been approved? Because that's kind of seems like something we're deciding between. Like, one of these main questions is, do we want to move the, I mean, it almost is the main question. Are we going to move this development envelope? And so say we deny all of this, there is still this other development envelope that stands that can get built on, I guess, is how I understand it. And so it's almost like they have to choose between the two, or at least they can voice their opinions on the difference, on their feelings of the differences between the two.
I'm not sure if we're educated enough to make that.
I mean, broadly, neither this nor the 2012 subdivision are of any concern to us.
Yeah.
There's no objection, there's no, great, we need more houses in town. Our concern is simply that whatever is done, not destroy our drinking water.
So can I ask a question that goes to that? Which is maybe Jeff could be the best one to answer this, but there was some talk about how, like, the concern was actually should be more to the pond. Like, is there anything, what is this quickly, like, what is the specific concern? What could actually happen to both the well or the pond? Let's say we didn't, someone did this wrong. What are we looking at?
Yeah, I don't know, what's the word, stormwater pollution protection plan. So we could probably do 100 SWIPs for DOT level, VTrans level projects a year at least. And then,
Slips.
yeah, stormwater protection pollution, which is the same as a 3-90-20. New Hampshire is a SWIP. Vermont's 3-90-20, but we do it for contractors and state So we go in and we say, how is this construction affecting wetlands, water bodies, et cetera? I don't see any issue with the well here. I've had my head in that well house actually before with spider webs, among other things. So the dug well to me sits at the bottom of the hill and it's getting groundwater into the well, which is isolated from what I would say is a perennial stream that comes down the hill into the pond. My main concern would be what sediment, what erosion and sediment impacts could be to the perennial stream. And to the extent anything hits that perennial stream, it's gonna end up in the pond. So
And to be fair, the well is about 5.5 feet from the pond, so like.
it is,
Practically speaking, I mean, it's
Yeah,
all
but
the
you
same
see-
water.
I believe this.
well, I don't necessarily disagree, there's a little earthen, filter.
Filter in between.
But the issue for me is you could get a bunch of sediment in that pond, and the worst, I've seen places where, I've seen full slope fitters for fairly substantial projects before, because they're not being properly managed, so that's the worst case scenario. In this case, if it's not properly managed, the least bad impact could be transport of sediment downgrading into the pond, and that's gonna fill the pond up. The worst case scenario is something worse than that. It's not managed properly.
Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to say, like, on behalf of Buck, you know, as a property owner, he's had this piece of land since the early eighties. And, when he carved out and sold that property, the plan was to maximize the value of this piece of land. And we did look at it at one point and we're thinking, that's why the wastewater test sites were done at different locations, possibly approaching to put up 3 or 4 houses. And he took a step back and he did think about what is best, you know, for the town of Norwich, and for you, that's your home, and putting a home right there on that lower level. So these owners, the applicants, came to us and they really seemed like a good fit. And we've done a lot of research and spent a lot of time with Jeff trying to navigate how best to get a road up there, not put a lot of demands, you know, on the town, with, you know, 4 homes that would add, you know, to the schools, to the fire system, everything else. So we felt this was a good decision and responsible planning on behalf of Jeff. So just wanted to say that. So consider our position as well. We have a lot right now with the building envelope that's not in compliance. So we'd like to achieve that.
Who just spoke? I couldn't see who spoke, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kelly Karen, I work for Buck Carlson, the owner of the property.
So I have a question for the Sheldons. Do you know if your pond is spring fed, brook fed, or both?
I would say both, I mean, the stream flows directly into it, so that's.
And the
Yeah.
stream, I don't see the stream pictured on this elevation map. But does it follow the contour lines?
I think Jeff may have a version of it.
Yeah, so I would, the vast majority of runoff that hits the pond, if I flip it this way, Don, there's the contour, the V of the contour heads up the hill some distance. So this watershed, all of that goes to the pond.
Yeah, okay.
But I would also say at the bottom of the slope where you typically see the transition and slope break, that's where you're gonna have the groundwater feeding it as
Yeah.
well. So I think even if it's in a drought scenario, this is still gonna be wet and full.
Very much so, no, it's full of them all year.
I actually have the original findings on that. I should get you.
Yeah.
For the pond, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a man-made pond. In New Hampshire would need a permit.
A career dive.
But your pond is never dried up, unlike my pond. So that means, and my pond is,
My pond's full of road.
yeah, yeah, that's another story. We're neighbors and we share ponds. Anyway, my point is, if the pond is never dried up, it must be spring fed. Because if it was just brook fed on a dry summer, you would expect it to dry up. So that might offer you some protection that the pond is self-sustaining and their well is right next to the pond, correct? And that should give you some confidence and some assurance that your water is not going to be affected by this development.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is we've only lived there for 2 years, so our experience of the
Oh,
ebb and flow of
okay.
that pond is not something I think we can really
Yeah.
explain to.
So quick, a perennial stream is one where the water never stops. An intermittent stream is one where the water flow stops at least a portion of the year. I've never been on this site where the water has stopped. I believe the classification is perennial stream.
Huh.
It is a perpetually flowing stream, in my opinion, because of the scale of the watershed above.
And can I don't know whether this is relevant to any of our discussion, but so if there's water running into that pond, and if the pond doesn't overflow, like, is
It
there
does
water?
overflow.
Where does it go?
It's a different culvert down on the road.
So
Oh,
the stream comes in at the top and then there's another stream at the bottom that goes
Oh,
down
okay,
and
okay.
eventually goes into ground.
It's a little berm around it.
Okay.
Is it swimmable? I'll check it out.
Site visits,
Mom does this like.
Do you feel like you have enough?
I think
Yes. All right, let's try this again.
Yeah, wanna jump over.
Motion to close the hearing. Don, thank you. You get a second? Barry, thank you very much. All those in favor?
Hi.
Thank you, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Yeah. It's.
Sorry, we didn't, identify you first time around.
Yeah, so we've closed the public hearing. We're not gonna take any more testimony. We'll deliberate. And we will
Good night.
have a decision for everyone in 45 days. Usually less.
Decision or is that a verbal decision?
It's a written decision.
Here's
And
Yeah.
delivered
development.
by email, usually, or mail, which is it, like,
Oh,
okay.
yeah,
Great,
yeah. You'll know. You'll know. Yeah,
thank you all.
thank you.
Thank you. Me too.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Great.
Are we still recording?
Right now we are. We
Yeah.
could move to go into
We could-
deliberative session and stop recording.
We can, yeah, we don't wanna lose, obviously, Matt and Alec.
Yeah.
We can stop recording unless we wanna do, are there any other zoning administrator updates or anything that needs to be recorded?
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, there's some upcoming things that I think are gonna be kind of interesting that I'd like to sort of brief you on, but I don't have an application for them yet.
Okay,
And I also want to kind of apologize for, the incomplete prep for this hearing.
well, this was a busy one.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. There was a lot of prior work.
Yeah.
And, the confusion between our zoning regulations, driveway standards, and the waiver and the subdivision
Yeah.
doesn't have the specific, so I apologize for that.
No worries. All right, well, let's go stop the recording. We can maybe go into deliberative session. Just
Yeah,
have energy for that.
Sure.
all right, so all in. Let's start recording.